Honorable Prime Minister of St. Martin, Sylvia Ray Jacobs, Honorable Prime Minister of Aruba, Evelyn Weaver Cruz, Honorable Prime Minister of Curacao, Kilmar, State Secretary of Kingdom Relations and Digitization, Alexandra van Hoffland, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen of the viewing and listening public, both here and abroad. I'm Gisele York, and on behalf of the Honorable Prime Minister of St. Martin, Sylvia Ray Jacobs, I welcome you today, Friday, January 13th, 2023, to this press conference regarding the discussions had during the ministerial consultation quadripartite meetings. I would now like to invite the Honorable Prime Minister of St. Martin, Sylvia Ray Jacobs, to address you. Prime Minister.
Thank you so much, Gisele. First of all, let me say a welcome to and thank you to my colleagues from Aruba, Curacao, and the State Secretary from the Netherlands, Ms. van Hoffland, Ms. Evelyn Weaver Cruz, and Mr. Pisas, for the hard work together with our teams that we were able to complete today. And also a great big thank you to Mr. Richard Doornbos for valiantly and very effectively chairing the meetings held over these 2 days. The Secretariat of the Chairman also working very diligently also late into the night. A great big thank you. As a result, I will be making the joint statement on behalf of all 4 of us. Over the past 2 days, we have had constructive discussions on the manner in which we wish to cooperate with each other in the kingdom. A cooperation that is based on equality, ownership, and mutual trust, and which corresponds with the way we view our common future. A cooperation that should lead to the implementation of reforms that contribute to the resilience and sustainable development of the countries. The positions of the 4 countries in the kingdom have been shared in a transparent and open atmosphere. These positions reaffirm the importance of the reforms as laid down in the country packages. The purpose of these discussions was to make further agreements on the manner in which we are going to arrange cooperation with each other in the implementation of said country packages. I am proud to say that we have been successful in reaching an outline agreement, a principal agreement on a mutual agreement. This agreement replaces the proposed Consensus Kingdom Act on the COHO, the Caribbean Body for Reform and Development. This Kingdom Act, or the proposed Kingdom Act, had been submitted to the parliaments and the second chamber, where it received critical feedback. Aruba, Curacao, and St. Martin have taken the initiative and have come up with a proposal, which was the point of discussion over the past 2 days. The aim was to arrive at a mutual arrangement in which, among other things, agreements about the working method, the manner of reporting, and the support by the Netherlands, as well as the duration of the arrangement, has been laid down. And this does justice to the equal relations within the kingdom. Over the past 2 days, we have worked hard to further concretize these agreements. During the coming period, the agreements will be further elaborated upon by our official teams. It is expected that within short, a definite mutual agreement will be signed. In addition, the status regarding the dispute settlement was discussed. The countries are awaiting the positions of the parliaments and the second chamber on this topic. Equally, the topic of the democratic deficit, as well as the discussion on the Van Raak motion, were discussed. This focuses on disputes and responsibilities within the kingdom. In this context, as countries, we have agreed to further these discussions in a kingdom conference that is to be organized.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs. I would now like to invite the Prime Minister of Aruba, Prime Minister Weaver Cruz, to address us.
Thank you. First of all, I would also like to start with a word of thanks to the Prime Minister of St. Martin, my colleague Sylvia Ray Jacobs, for hosting these meetings and her team for the organization. It was very well organized, and I'm happy to have been able to visit your beautiful island. Thank you. I want to thank also colleagues Alexandra van Hoffland, Sylvia Ray Jacobs, and Pic Pisas, and your teams and the Aruba team for the hard work, the great cooperation during the period leading to these meetings and these meetings in St. Martin. On behalf of the government of Aruba and the people of Aruba, I can say that we are very satisfied with the progress and the outcome of these meetings. Aruba is in recuperation. It is no secret that the COVID pandemic had hit us very hard. According to the IMF, Aruba was one of the hardest hit countries due to our large dependency on tourism. Fortunately, now we are also one of the countries that is showing an impressive recuperation. Tourism is back to pre-pandemic levels, and the economy will reach pre-pandemic levels this year. And for the first time in years, Aruba has a fiscal surplus. We are grateful for the support that we received from the Netherlands during the pandemic, and now with the implementation of the reforms, technical assistance and financial assistance, which helped us to make progress on several areas, such as taxation, border control, a fair trade authority, financial reporting system, statistical systems, and so forth. Our commitment is not only to bounce back to pre-pandemic levels, but to bounce forward towards a more stronger and more resilient Aruba. And the way to achieve this is to implement the reforms we agreed on in November of 2020, the so-called country packages of landspakketten. And this week, these days, we discussed the way we are working together in the kingdom, and especially on the reforms and the country packages. The COHO is now definitely off the table, and instead we have a principal agreement on an onderlinge regeling, which is not a kingdom act, and is based on a proposal of Aruba, Curaçao, and St. Martin. And once we sign the agreement, which will be within a couple of weeks, we can close this chapter of intense negotiations since mid-2020. For Aruba, it is also very important that we agreed to start talks about the COVID liquidity support in February of this year. It is important to have clarity because as it stands now, we have to pay off the debt in October of this year. So it is very positive that we will start the talks very soon. And finally, another point of importance for Aruba is the fact that we will start discussing the democratic deficit within the kingdom. And in this case, we feel that we need to work towards an arrangement of dispute resolution, the geschillenregeling. So we conclude the meetings on a positive note and eager to continue to work towards the progress of our people. 2023 will undoubtedly bring new challenges for each one of us. Some similar challenges, some very different challenges. But I'm sure that if we work together, we all can achieve much more. With your permission, I would like to switch to Papiamento to address the people of Aruba. Aruba, Curaçao, St. Martin y Holanda te llegan a un acuerdo de lienan grandi di un arreglo mutuo, un onderlinge regeling que lo bing na lugar di ecojo. E de último 2 dias aqui nós estamos tendo reunião um hobby construtivo, ribe forma, com os que seguem trabalhando junto do reino. Me agradeci primeiro de St. Martin e sua equipe por organizar a reunião aqui, que está um hobby bom organizar. E também agradeci primeiro de Curaçao e St. Martin e secretário de Estado van Hoffland pela cooperação para nos poder chegar a logro importante aqui. Nós chega pues a acordo de princípio, ribe onderlinge regeling, que também no lugar de acordo que eu proponi anteriormente, den qual tiene conta com o comentário e a crítica ng dia 4 parlamento ng. Essa aqui é a alternativa que Aruba, Curaçao e St. Martin abin cune e awe nos chegan a acordo ribache com algum cambio. Den últimos 2 dias em que nós trabalhamos duro para concretizar a palabração e nos timna de consejero lo finalizar a palabração na hora seguinte semana nos dilante e nos espera que o começo de março de ano aqui nos por firma e acordo. Outro ponto que agora tratar de importância para Aruba está é hecho que a palavra que lo começar com deliberação tocante de fiança que Holanda aduna nos no quadro de COVID crisis que lo vence dia 10 de outubro de ano aqui que a deliberação aqui começa na fevereiro 2023, outra luna. Para nós isso aqui está somente importante, para sobre a maneira que custa agora que na outubro nós temos que pagar 900 milhões de florin back que nossa presta de Holanda, e está muito importante para nós ter claridade e revisar que a deliberação depois começa outra luna. Outro ponto muito importante que agora tratar também é o tema de geschillenregeling e de quadro que a cada palavra que nós está guardando no nosso parlamento não está tratando o tema aqui e depois nós lo volve reunir e e nosso papel de déficit democrático e de quadro aqui a palavra que lo organizar conferência de reino para tratar diferentes temas aqui. Pois nós terminar a reunião aqui de uma nota sumamente positiva e com hope e determinação para seguir trabalhando junto para lograr progresso e bem-estar de internos comunidade. 2023, indudablemente, é um ano que nós traz um reto para nós todos. Algum reto é similar, outro é diferente. Mas me tenho convicção que se nós trabalhamos juntos, nós podemos lograr mais para cada de nossos países. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I now invite the Honorable Prime Minister of Curaçao, Mr. Kilmar to address us.
Thank you. First of all, I want to start with good afternoon, everyone watching us on the online platforms, TVs, and members of the press. I want to thank my dear colleague, Sylvia, Prime Minister of St. Maarten, for hosting us. Everything was well done. And my other colleagues, Alexandra and Evelyn. And we'll not forget the delegations. Thanks for the great work. And I want to thank my delegation and my dear colleague here, Ludmila Labuni. We have been together from the beginning. We still are. We are right together. We die together.
Hopefully not.
Normally, no, a way of saying it. Normally, I don't show emotions on this, but this time I will. We have been through a lot, and now I can say, Kogo is off the table. So now is, I don't know how to say it, but it's very emotional for us in Curaçao because we have been, there has been a lot of attack on us on the Kogo because we promised we are going to go to the table to negotiate it, and we made it. And it's very, very important for us this. And with all due respect, I want to address my people for this big achievement in Papiamento because we have to tell them what we achieved today in our language. This is big news for my country, and I want to do it. Um caloroso boa tarde. Nós estamos discutindo nós via qualquer meio de comunicação aí na Kosovo. Dia 18 de janeiro, nós participar na cumpre político entre Aruba, Kosovo, Sint Maarten e Holanda, na qual ocasião nós discutir diferentes temas importantes para a relação com o reino holandês. Assim, na novembro 2020, o governo de Aruba, Kosovo, Sint Maarten afirmou a regra com a Holanda para implementar certas reformas para reformar o setor público de três países. Essa aqui estava assim chamada paquete de país, lançamento, que entretanto tem 2 anos de execução. Para chegar na aprovação concreto, quando se chega a ano venidero, ano passado o governo de Kosovo, junto com o governo de Aruba e Sint Maarten, a palavra com a Holanda durante um cumbre similar, passe uma proposição para chegar a um arreglo novo de supervisão e a implementação de reforma mencionada. Esse aqui estava o tópico principal da cumbre aqui, na Sint Maarten. Maneira roupa de bolso a reparar último tempo aqui. Nós estamos trabalhando duro sobre o tema de reforma e negociação com a Holanda. Não obstante, esse nós precisamos suportar diferentes ataques de outros que está desconhecido, com a índole de negociação de maneira essa aqui. Mas, me pode indicar de estar contente com nossa lugar de convencer a Holanda, com nossa irmã Isla Aruba e Sint Maarten, para conjuntamente nós virmos com um arreglo que está mais satisfatório para a Isla. Nós acorda tu discussão ferviente e caliente que toma lugar no Conselho depois da entrega do conceito de lei tocante corro na Staten. Depois de constatar que a lei não acarga a aprovação de Staten, dia 28 de março do ano passado, já se a Holanda com proposição para cambiar rumo de nossa discussão tocante a lei de corro. Com grande orgulho, me posso informar o povo do Conselho, com minha pessoa, junto com meu colega, senhora ministra Cecília, e outros dos islands, a lograr convencer a Holanda para vir com um arreglo mútuo que lo reemplazar o projeto de lei que lo introduzir corro. Tem arreglo mútuo novo que nós acordamos a ponto no princípio de um sistema de cooperação, mas igual entre partes do reino para executar e reformar com nossa palavra de paquete de país, é assim chamar landspaquete. Coisa muito importante que nós alogatar com nossa Comissão Nacional de Reforma, outra parte igual da Organização de Holanda que está monitorear e reformar. É assim chamar TWO. Nós a palavra com nossa Organização Nacional de Reforma e TWO lo hace turcos conjuntamente. Ribombase igual e também me persona como ministro-presidente e secretário de Estado para assunto de reino, lo tem decisão final e para todo aspecto de reforma com nossa companhia com Holanda e não corro também aqui. Outro ponto importante que nós alogatar, que dentro de pouco nós vamos começar a deliberação com Holanda arriba refinanciamento de dívida que nós assim durante o período de Covid, qual lo vence em outubro de ano aqui. É decir, está muito importante para chegar a um acordo novo de refinanciamento ou cancelação de dívida que Holanda promete que está querendo vencer. Nossa comunidade também, com o arreglo novo, dura maximalmente 4 anos e que depois se consulta com o nosso parlamento e pode prolongar com um período de 2 anos. Finalmente, nós a deliberar para terminar também importante enquanto nossa situação constitucional do reino, entre outros, déficit democrático, arreglo de disputa e assim chamar verschillende regeling e responsabilidade do país e do governo do reino. De acordo aqui, a comunidade que nós organizamos conferência de reino, caminha, lo deliberar anualmente, e me apontam aqui, para chegar a um desenvolvimento favorável de nossa relação com a Holanda. Me quero até aqui e gostosamente lo me elaborar qualquer pergunta que vini durante a roda de prensa aqui.
Thank you, Prime Minister Pisas. State Secretary of Kingdom Relations and Digitization, Ms. Alexandra van Hoffland, I give you the floor to address us.
Thank you very much, Giselle. And also from my side, I would like to thank St. Martin, and especially you, Sylvia Ray, for hosting these very, very good and intense talks that we had. We had very good discussions, as also was stated by my colleagues, our colleagues, in a very warm setting, in a good feeling, and I'm very happy that we came to agreement that we came to, and I will not elaborate on the content of that because that has been done very diligently by you in our general statement. I also wanted to thank my colleagues Evelien Wever-Kroes and Kilmar Pisas for their contribution to our discussions, and I'm very happy that we are here today after these 2 days of talks, very intensive days, that have formed a new, I would say, basis, and a very beautiful basis for our cooperation, not only in this year, 2023, but hopefully also for the years to come. And this cooperation between us, after all the heavy years that we have passed us, not only Irma, which played a very big role, of course, here in St. Martin, but also the corona pandemic, have made it very important that we are going to look forward to a future that is not only based on things that go wrong or the difficulties that we had, but on chances and optimism and new ways forward in our cooperation in the kingdom. And I'm very happy to see, as also was stated by some of you, that we see that economic growth is coming back. and that there's new chances for work and for development and for investments to the benefit and also to the well-being of the people that live here in the Caribbean parts of our kingdom. I think we have not only spoken but also agreed on the aspects of how are we going to move forward, how are we going to work together. A cooperation based on mutual trust and equity, on also ownership from all of our sides. A cooperation that should not only lead to the right decisions, but also lead to a feeling and to the trust that we need in order to move forward. We have, after the discussions that we had today and yesterday as well, a very clear, we have designed a very clear path forward. And this was important because in the past year, as long as I'm now in my job, we have been discussing COHO all the time. And I think it's very good that we came now to a conclusion saying that we want to work on the basis of mutual cooperation, and that basis is still very strongly based on the idea that there is work to do for all of us. Work in terms of the reforms that have been discussed also by my colleagues and that are going to help, as we desire, the people that live here in the different countries. So we're going to strengthen the climate for entrepreneurship. We're going to work further on developing education and the link between education and the labor market. We're going to work on making sure that also in the future the healthcare systems will be payable, will be there. We're going to work on new tax reforms, and we're going to make sure that all of this can be done by governments that are strong enough and supported by the Netherlands in order to do what needs to be done. So I'm very happy with the agreements that we made. I'm very happy also with the atmosphere in which we made the agreements, and therefore I also look forward to not only finalizing what we have agreed upon, because we made this headlines agreement or principles agreement. We're going to write it further down and hopefully are going to make sure that we are able to sign this agreement early March of this year. And I'm looking forward to having that, putting my signature together with my colleagues to make sure that this is all going to happen in the progress of and the good for everyone in the kingdom. Thank you.
Thank you, State Secretary Van Huffelen. And I give the floor back to the Prime Minister of St. Martin.
Yes, thank you, Gisele. So in my opening statements, I really made a statement on behalf of all of the countries. But of course, I would also want to give some personal words as Prime Minister to the people of St. Martin in general. It has been a long journey. It has indeed been 2 years since the start of a time when we were facing the most difficult period of our lives and when we did not know what our future held. We did not know what the world's future held. And yet, based on the discussions had within the kingdom, we, as countries, made agreements to move forward, to execute reforms, and to receive liquidity support. Today, we are 2 years further. We felt differently then in terms of how that went, but today I can say it is a win for the kingdom. It is a win for the countries who have been striving for equality, for equity within the kingdom, and for growing mutual agreements based on trust. I think this kingdom that we have now is far improved from the kingdom 2 years ago, and that has been the goal. We have today started something that will lead to future mutual agreements that will lead to stronger countries in a time when we are still in development and when much assistance is needed. But we must also be able to feel that we can rely on our kingdom partners without feeling that there is the old colonial discussion still happening. So we are very grateful that with this new season, discussions that are very, very maybe touchy and has a little bit of pain involved, but very necessary for growth to take place, are on the way. And so Within short, as we said, hopefully by March, we will be signing that mutual agreement, March 2023, and moving forward with discussions to be able to have serious talks about the debt that we have accrued as a result with our partners. We look forward to those discussions happening in the same manner with mutual respect and understanding for the realities we are facing. I think especially the members of the TWO who have been in our countries from the beginning to now are better able to understand the reality. And we're seeing more and more ministers and state secretaries from the Netherlands, as well as the Council of State, all persons who deliberate on kingdom matters, coming to the kingdom to get a better understanding of what we face on a daily basis. And that builds trust. So we thank them for those journeys. We will also continue to journey to the Netherlands so that our voices continue to be heard there as well. So as we move forward in the right direction, I thank my colleagues. I look forward to signing that first mutual agreement with you that will lead to even better and continued growth in the relationship within the kingdom.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I would now like to open the floor for questions from the media. We are aware that some members of the delegations are traveling immediately after this, so we will see how many questions we can get through before we have to close. We will start first with members of the media that are present today, and then those will be followed by questions submitted from media abroad. I would like to invite our local journalists to please introduce yourself, the media house that you're from, and please indicate who your question is for.
My name is Suzanne Koeliger. I work for the Daily Herald. I'm actually on vacation, but I figured let me come here because it's important and it's positive. My question is there any idea already when the Kingdom Conference is going to be held? Will be that after March when you've signed the mutual agreement? Is there any time frame? This is a big thing to organize.
Yeah. So in our discussions and deliberations, we do meet on a monthly basis virtually. And so in our next meeting, we will be determining the way forward in terms of that, as well as the topics to be put on that Kingdom Conference. So that will be in February. We will be making the decisions as to the timeline, the topics, etc., as well as the participants.
And I heard Mr. Pisa say that this might become an annual thing, Kingdom Conference. So that means that the old habit, the old custom of having these Kingdom Conferences would be resumed, which would be a good thing.
Hmm? Oh, okay. Normally we have important topics to talk about. Koge was one of them, and now we have more important topics to talk about. I think this year, if we did not finish, we will be together talk about continuing each year doing this, because it's important to keep talking and to keep coming to mutual agreements on every topic we have, and that's going to be more flexible between us, between Netherlands, Curaçao, Netherlands, Aruba. We're getting more results out of it. I think doing that annually will be doing all countries in the Netherlands a better way to communicate and come to mutual agreements.
I have one more question about the dispute regulation. I know the agreement countries have been really fighting hard for this. Is there any time frame when we can expect this regulation to come off the ground finally in a mutual agreement that all the countries can agree on in a format that we all agree?
Do you want me to respond to that?
Fighting hard.
Well, what we discussed today and what we agreed upon is that we will await the deliberations by the parliament. The 4 parliaments will be getting together soon in IPCO, and then they will discuss this, and we will await what comes out of those discussions, and then we, on the level of the governments, will take it up.
Thank you for those questions. We will now move over to a question that came in from Aruba. This question is from 24ora.com, and it is directed to Prime Minister R Cruz. The question is as follows. The MEP fraction leader in government, Trump Lee, still talks about exoneration and seems contradictory to previous statements from the Prime Minister that shows commitment towards paying Aruba's debt. Is there a lack of internal communication between the Prime Minister's own party?
Thank you for the question. No, there is no lack of internal communication. I think that when a member of parliament speaks his or her voice, that is something to be respected. The government has a position, parliament can have another position, and we respect the democratic principles on our island. The position of Aruba in general is the following. Of course, if there is debt cancellation, dispensation, or how you call it, of course we would like to be eligible for it. But as we stand now, it is a loan, and we need to come to agreement how this loan will be repaid. Do we have to repay it completely? When do we have to repay it? Those are for us the most important aspects now. And I'm happy that we already started discussing these in the Netherlands when the Minister of Finance and myself were there by the end of last year, and that now we have come to the agreement that in February the deliberations will start on this point. So no lack of internal communication. I think it's more a show of respect.
Thank you, Prime Minister R Cruz. This next question comes from the direct media of Curaçao, and it is for Prime Minister Pisas. The question is as follows. What is the difference between the onderlinge regeling and the COHO? And one of the main issues with the COHO was that there will be 3 Dutch European people appointed directly to coordinate the process and execution of the COHO. Is this still the case for the onderlinge regeling?
I'm going to address this in Papimento. There is a difference between onderlinge regeling and COHO. Onderlinge regeling está uma regra entre o governo, não? É um convênio que está a relação entre Holanda e Kosovo de implementação do paquete de país. Hoje nós comparamos com o COHO, o tabata, escola bom, mas essa coisa fora de mesa, o tabata lei de reino, que o tem que passa parlamento holandês, estabelecer conselho de supervisão independente, que é estabelecer conselho de supervisão independente, no caso esse é o ordem chama COHO. Então, é nombrado de Conselho de Ministros de Reino. Então, dado momento, se nós lo seguimos, nossa autonomia, a discussão basta ampla que nós lo vai dentro, na qual lo me pode dar mais explicação a mim com meu colega Lamoni, que aluna aqui na rede de prensa, e lo nossa autonomia. Tem caso de 3 holandeses europeus, que lo abini na COHO, que me diz que o COHO está falando bem, que vai nessa que não é caso, que só é a regra que nós também firma. Que nós trabalhamos mutuamente com o outro. Aqui não tem mais com o outro, nós está igual, então igual aqui, também redundar em tratamento de tanto das paquetes, a agenda, etc, etc, etc.
Thank you. We will now attempt to address Minister Pisas's extensive answer into English for our audience here.
Sim, meneer Prime Minister, a primeira parte da contestação minha tem muito bom. Se meneer pode repetir isso aí?
A diferença?
Sim, a diferença entre o COHO e a regra que tem agora.
Bom, a onderlinge regeling, mas não é uma regra entre o governo e o outro. Então, eigenlijk é um convênio que tem a relação entre Holanda, no caso de nossa work, entre a relação entre Holanda e Kosovo, de implementação do paquete de país.
The mutual agreement is an agreement between the countries and Holland, and it's also an agreement that will be implemented. Sim,
então é a diferença com o COHO.
The difference with the COHO.
COHO é uma lei de reino.
COHO is a kingdom act.
Lota tem que passar parlamento holandês.
That had to pass through the second chamber of Holland.
Caminho para estabelecer conselho de supervisão independente.
Where they wanted to establish an independent consultative body.
Yes, que o nombrador de governo de reino holandês.
Which was going to be appointed by the government, by the kingdom government.
Yes, and elo mina nos autonomia. Mina nos autonomia.
And would have undermined our autonomy.
Yes.
Thank you.
The 3 Dutch
Members.
Members, esse está com corpo de firmeza, então esse não tem mais.
And the 3 Dutch members that were going to be on the consultative body of the COHO, they are off the table because within this new arrangement, they are no longer there.
Thank you. The next question comes for the State Secretary, Ms. Van Hoffland, from Angel Baraka. Is State Secretary Van Huffelen aware of the report by Bonnie Benesh of how fragile Curacao really is and what drastic measures will be taken?
I'm actually not aware of this report, so I'm not sure what it's about. Maybe somebody else could explain, or they could write a bit more about this. I'm sorry, I do not know.
I can answer that.
You can
Prime
answer
Minister
it.
Pisas?
Yeah.
Lo qual que passa, tá?
What has happened,
Com organização independente,
that an independent conversation,
usando certo ponto não, aí uma conclusão com nosso
using
país,
certain points, have come to a
com nosso
conclusion
país
of
considerar
our country, that our country is being considered
Venezuela, Haiti e Congo.
with, seen as Venezuela, Haiti, and Congo,
Caminha é relato oficial,
whereas the official
ela
relate,
saca informação aqui foi de relato internacional, mas não recordo normal aqui tá papel de International Index something. I can't
the
remember the name
information
right
was
now.
extracted from the international
Caminha
index,
com source normal não tá aparecendo at all de documento oficial.
and wherein the name of Curacao did
Say
not appear at all
algo-
in this report.
Personalmente, nós lo atendemos com a Kosovo, mas o governo não aduna nenhum opdracht para nenhum classe de rapport, então segundo rapport que sai
This is
negativo
something-
aqui para nosso país.
This is something we will address ourselves in Curacao, because the government of Curacao at no point in time gave any instructions to write this report for our country.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't know.
State Secretary Van Huffelen. This question comes from 24order.com. And the question is as follows. State Secretary Van Huffelen is aware of the financial burden put specifically on the elderly that live on a bare-bone minimum pension plan. Aruba has passed several financial measures imposed by the Netherlands. Our community sees price increments everywhere. How can the Netherlands help the Aruba government give our elderly some breathing space financially?
Well, thank you very much. The whole goal behind the agreements that we have made today, yesterday and today, and agreed upon today, is to improve the lives of everyone living on the Caribbean islands. Because we are talking, and also this has been put in our statement, about the resilience and sustainability of our islands, to make sure that the economies are growing, that we work on improving healthcare and education and all these topics. And the idea is that we're going to work on that together. Of course, the very direct consequences or financial consequences are the responsibilities of the islands and the countries, but the basis behind what we are aiming for is to work together to improve the lives of everyone. And this is a goal that I am also very committed to, the Netherlands is very committed to, because we truly believe that together we can be stronger in these fields and aspects.
If I may add, thank you, Alexandra, for those words. I would like to say that especially the elderly have been a special focus of attention, and just now, the 1st of January of this year, we have introduced some measures that alleviate the burden that they experience. We have reduced the tax burden for pensionados, as we call them. The tax burden has been reduced for everybody earning an income or pension with 2%. Married couples that receive pensions, the tax burden has been lowered and reduced as well. We have increased the allowance, the reparation allowance for pensionados, and the old age pension has been increased. So we are aware that the cost of living is growing in Aruba. It is an area of concern for the government, but we are working on it as well.
Thank you. Before we move to our final online question, I would like to offer our local journalist the floor if she has any more questions.
To ask State Secretary one more question. How do you feel about this agreement that you've made, or the COHO? Because I mean, it was a big thing to have the COHO. Is it Do you see it as a loss of face for the Netherlands that now we have something to replace it? There's been so much discussion on it.
Now, what I see is that we now have an agreement that is supported by all of us. And the whole idea behind the reforms and the idea of cooperation is that we're going to do it together. Because the basis for growth in a broad sense, not only economic, but also in terms of education and healthcare and so on and so forth, is those reforms. And we agreed that those reforms are still at the center and the heart of what we're going to work on together, both in terms of capacity sharing, people, but also financial support. And I truly believe that, having agreed that that is what we are going to do for the benefit of the people that live here in the Caribbean islands and the countries is a huge step forward. Because any law, any kingdom law that we are proposing, and we have proposed it all together, right? We agreed upon the Coho law together, we sent it to all of our parliaments, and came to the conclusions that it has not the basis, it doesn't have the support that is needed. And therefore I find it very important that we now found an agreement that has the support and the basis of this support in all of our countries. And I'm looking forward to making sure that now we, with even more effort, because we already started working on the reforms, of course, but with even more effort and in a joint cooperative manner, we're going to establish what we want to achieve. So, no, I truly believe that this is a very, very big and huge step. It was also indicated, I think, by my colleagues, because now we can we can put to rest a discussion and focus on moving forward, taking the opportunities that we see, making sure that the countries become stronger, and have these discussions on also a very equal basis. And I'm very also happy, and I want to compliment the three countries on it. That they, after we had the discussions in June, they sat together and drafted an onderlinge overeenkomst, a mutual agreement. And we've intensively discussed it, revised it, and so on and so forth. So it's going to be a bit different than the first proposal, but still, it was presented and drafted by the countries that also have to work very hard on the reform. So I'm just super happy.
Thank you. And our final question for the day comes from 24order.com, and it's again for the State Secretary Van Hoffland. The chair for president of the CAFT will be vacant soon. Are there any developments on appointing a replacement?
Yes, we've been working on that very hard, also discussed it with my colleagues. We are working on making sure that when the present president of CAFT, Mr. Gades, will be leaving, that before he leaves, we will have a new candidate coming in.
Thank you, and thank you to the members of the media for posing their questions, as well as our prime ministers and our state secretary for their answers.
Thank you.
Honorable Prime Ministers, State Secretary, online viewers and radio listeners, this brings us to the end of today's broadcast. For access to this broadcast, stay tuned to facebook.com/xsmgov or listen via St. Martin Gov radio station 107.9 FM. On behalf of the Prime Minister of St. Martin, the Honorable Ms. Sylvia Ray Jacobs, and the Government of St. Martin, I am Gisele York, and I wish you a pleasant day further. Thank you for your attendance.